Okay, let's get into this deep dive. We're looking at the really serious allegations surrounding Sean Diddy Combs.
Right, and the ongoing legal battles, our main source here is going to be excerpts from a 60 Minutes Australia report.
And that report brings together some pretty compelling stuff. Insider accounts, legal views, gives you a real snapshot.
Exactly, and it lays out the core legal situation right away. We're talking serious sex trafficking charges in New York.
Yeah, and the report mentioned, as of their time frame, he'd already been in prison for about 8 months.
That's right, 8 months. He's pleaded not guilty to everything, of course.
But the defense strategy mentioned in the report,
Yeah.
that's something else.
It really is quite unusual. Apparently, his own lawyers are describing him in, well, pretty negative terms.
Like what?
Things like dishonest, violent, horrible, a promiscuous swinger,
Yeah.
someone who lied to and cheated on multiple partners.
Wow. Okay, so the lawyers are saying this.
That's what the report details. It sounds like they're trying to argue, being a bad person doesn't automatically make you guilty of these specific crimes.
Right. Okay, so like separating the unlikable personality from the criminal charges.
Pretty much. The report called it a risky tactic, but maybe one they felt they had to take, given the evidence they mentioned.
So that's our plan then. We're going to walk through what this report lays out, pull out the key insights, the main takeaways from these accounts.
Yeah, give you a clear picture of the allegations and the whole situation, at least as presented in this material.
Let's dig back into that legal side for a second. You mentioned the sex trafficking charges.
Yeah, which are incredibly serious on their own.
But this defense approach, openly admitting to some of the, let's say, less savory aspects of his character.
Exactly. Admitting the dishonesty, the cheating, even violence in some contexts, but drawing a hard line, saying, look, that's personal life, maybe bad behavior, but it's not the criminal activity he's charged with.
Trying to get ahead of it, maybe? Like, acknowledge the flaws before the prosecution paints that picture.
That seems to be the interpretation in the report, yeah. Kind of neutralizing it by saying, okay, he's not perfect, maybe even horrible in some ways, but let's focus on the actual evidence for these crimes.
Still feels risky, though. You're basically putting his character on display.
Absolutely. The report definitely flags it as risky, but again, the suggestion is it might be a strategy forced by the circumstances, by the evidence the prosecution supposedly has.
It really shows what a tough spot the defense must be in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving beyond the legal strategy itself, the report features some really powerful stories from people who were inside his circle. Phil Pines.
Yes, Phil Pines. He was Combs' senior personal assistant for a couple of years, 2019 to 2021.
And the report says he started out really excited, like this is his big break.
Totally. Saw it as a huge step into the music world, working for this, icon. He talked about seeing these incredibly lavish parties, like the huge 50th birthday bash.
But then things changed. The report says his duties became more sinister.
Yeah, that's the phrase used. He detailed having to carry what was called a Diddy pack.
A Diddy pack, what was in it?
According to Pines in the report, drugs, marijuana joints, mushrooms, stuff like that. And he had to have it on him constantly.
Wow. Okay, and then there were these Wild King nights.
Right. Pines reportedly described prepping hotel rooms for these, setting out a whole list of baby oil, Astroglide, candles, incense, liquor, specific lighting, toiletries, and, again, drugs.
And the cleanup afterwards. The report mentioned that too.
Oh, yeah. He described it as disgusting, said there'd be half-empty bottles, broken glass, the oil and lube just everywhere. He apparently needed a mask and gloves.
Grim. But what was the main focus of the cleanup?
Getting rid of the records. That was the term Pines used, according to the report. Destroying any evidence left behind. That was priority number one.
So not just messy, but actively trying to hide something.
Exactly. Pines also claimed he had to delete videos, incriminating stuff from Combs' phones and iPads after these nights. It was about concealment.
And the report mentioned a real atmosphere of control.
Yeah, Pines described this feeling, this sort of implied threat. Like, if you refuse to do something,
You're out.
Worse than out. You're done in the industry. Because Combs knows everybody. That's the quote from the report. It created this environment where saying no felt almost impossible.
That sounds incredibly coercive.
And Pines claimed this control sometimes tipped into actual violence he witnessed. The report mentions the Cassie Ventura CCTV footage that everyone saw, sort of as context.
Right.
But Pines described a specific incident he said he saw himself at Combs' place in Miami on Star Island.
What happened?
He alleged Combs got into an argument with a female guest who was topless and pushed her, then kicked her twice. Pines specifically mentioned Combs' eyes going black and how frightening that was.
Jeez, that's intense.
There was another incident in the report, really disturbing, where Pines claimed Combs basically tested his loyalty during a sex party by making him perform a sexual act with a female guest.
Oh, Mike.
Pines said he felt totally powerless, but he did eventually manage to just run away from the scene, flee.
You can only imagine the impact of something like that. The report says it affected him deeply.
Led him into a deep depression, yeah. He said telling his story now is partly therapeutic for him, and he hopes it helps other people too.
It's quite a portrayal he gives.
It is. He described Combs as like one of the most charismatic individuals ever, but with this very, very dark side.
And his final word on it in the report, what do you think should happen?
Pretty blunt. Jail time. He has to pay for that.
That's a heavy account. The report also spoke to someone else, Sara Rivers, a musician.
Yes, Sara Rivers. She knew Combs from way back, the early 2000s, from his reality show Making the Band.
And her initial impression, was it similar to Pines?
In a way, yeah. Initially, she saw him as this huge figure, a god, a mogul. Getting a contract with his label felt like the absolute dream ticket.
But that changed too.
Quickly, according to her account in the report, she said she saw the real Combs, describing him as an arrogant bully completely out of control.
Did she give examples?
Yeah, she mentioned hearing him make these really aggressive verbal threats to her bandmates. Things like, well, really disturbing stuff like, "You make me so mad I want to eat your flesh."
Whoa.
And another time threatening to pay a crackhead $20 to attack them. She said it made her terrified to speak out about anything.
Understandable. And then she described a personal encounter.
Yes, a really upsetting one. She said Combs cornered her when she was alone on the set.
Yeah.
Allegedly rubbed his hand down her breast and said something like, "If you need anything at all, you let me know." She described it as creepy, unwelcome, said it still distresses her even all these years later.
That's awful. What did she do?
She just ran out. Felt totally alone, like nobody would ever believe her if she said anything back then.
And did she feel there were consequences for her professionally?
She absolutely believes so. According to the report, she's convinced Combs blacklisted her after that, killed her music career. She used the word stuck, feeling stuck 21 years later, like something she loved was just taken and thrown away.
Wow. Two very different relationships, different eras, but similar themes emerging in their accounts.
Definitely.
Oh.
The source material really highlights these recurring alleged patterns of behavior and control.
So beyond the criminal trial and these specific stories, the report also touches on civil lawsuits, right? A different legal front.
Exactly. It introduces an attorney, Andrew Van Arsdale. He's bringing civil actions against Combs, totally separate from the criminal case.
And this isn't just one or two cases.
No, the scale described in the report sounds massive. Van Arsdale says they represent thousands of survivors of abuse and are getting hundreds of other lawsuits ready.
Thousands. How are they finding these people?
The report details this call center they set up in Billings, Montana. They promoted it with social media ads.
Okay.
And apparently it's generated something like 15,000 calls, people detailing alleged abuse going back decades. Van Arsdale himself has taken on 37 cases from those calls already. The report mentioned one client was allegedly only 15 when the abuse happened.
15,000 calls. That points to a huge potential number of alleged incidents over a long time.
Almost 30 years, the report suggests. Some of these accusers have potentially been holding on to these secrets for that entire time. The alleged behavior is described as brazen efforts to coerce people into sex acts.
And why stay silent for so long? The report mentions fear.
A profound fear, yeah. Fear of what Combs could do to their careers, given his influence in the industry, but also potentially fear on a personal level, too.
That power dynamic seems central here.
It's a major theme in the report. And it suggests this criminal trial might just be the tip of the iceberg, legally speaking. It could be a very long process.
And the idea is, if he's found guilty criminally,
then potentially even more people might feel safe enough or empowered enough to come forward with their own stories. That's the expectation mentioned.
So, wrapping this up, thinking about everything we've pulled from the report, it's clear the alleged experiences took a huge personal toll. You hear it in Phil Pines talking about depression, Sara Rivers feeling her career was just destroyed.
Absolutely. And the legal side is complex, ongoing. As the report stated, Combs maintains his innocence, pleading not guilty. It's going to take time to unfold.
But you also have that strong call for accountability, like from Pines, saying Combs has to pay.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning again, the report included that resource number for victims of domestic violence. 1-800-RESPECT, that's 1-800-737-732.
Okay. So considering all this, the allegations stretching back nearly 3 decades, the reported atmosphere of control and fear, the sheer number of potential civil claims now emerging, it leaves you with a pretty big question, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What does this deep dive really suggest about how power dynamics, maybe especially in industries like entertainment, could potentially allow alleged patterns of behavior to persist for so long unchecked? And maybe more importantly, what does it actually take for individuals caught in those dynamics to finally feel they can speak their truth? Something to think about.